bows, TKOs, yeah. Bows, TKOs, we got bows, TKOs, yeah. Bows, TKOs, we got bows, TKOs, yeah. Bows, TKOs.
Bows and TKOs. We are live, episode 38 on this beautiful Monday evening in the Valley. I'm your host, Shane Gillette, and I'm extra fired up for this week's episode as we are 3 days away from heading to the East Coast, to Southern Florida, to Miami for UFC 299. Get in there a couple days before the fight. Enjoy some nice rest and relaxation. But we have a loaded show to talk about this week. So it'll be a nice early pod. Next week, I do not fly back until late Thursday. So I will not have a pod until late week before the next fight card next week. So enjoy the early one. We have a loaded show. Just a couple fights announced. We had this past weekend a couple events that I didn't even know about. We had the Gamebred Barknuckle event. We had Jake Paul boxing. Literally did not see any preview of that at all, probably for a reason. And then we are going to recap UFC Fight Pass Invitational 6 that happened last night. Recap the UFC Fight Night Vegas 87 and preview UFC 299. This card is stacked as it gets. Back-to-back massive pay-per-views, UFC 299 in Miami, UFC 300 in Vegas, potentially two of the more deep, full-quality cards that I've seen in UFC history. Excited to talk to you guys about it. So, some fights that have been booked. We had Chase Hooper taking on Vyacheslav Borshev May 11th. That'll be a fun one. You know, living in the Seattle area, Enum Claw local, the young gun, Chase Hooper, looking to add quality names on his resume. We have Elves Brenner coming off a straight bloody battle, taking on UFC newcomer Miktabek Orolbai at UFC 301 in Rio de Janeiro. Miami, Vegas, Rio de Janeiro, the UFC starting off 2024 with a bang. And in other news, Pat Sabatini officially out of his fight against Nate Landwehr. That's a couple weeks out. Nate's still staying on the card. Billy Quarantillo had his opponent pull out of his fight. That's the fight I wanted to see anyways. Give me Billy Q. Give me Nate the Train. That is a collision course waiting to happen. PFL signing ex-UFC athlete Talia Santos. Someone who was a contender in the women's UFC, now trying to go and make $1 million in the PFL in-season tournament. I don't know if she will qualify for that right away or not. But looking at her UFC run, she beat Molly McCann, beat Jillian Robertson, Roxanne Modafferi, and Joanne Wood. Lost in the title fight in the Flyweight Championship June of 2022 to Valentina Shevchenko. And then in August of 2023, lost to the young, really good Erin Blanchfield. I'm assuming her contract had expired and she wanted to seek other opportunities because that's the only thing that really makes logical sense here. So the PFL getting a quality fighter in Talia Santos. We have a really fun BKFC Buckle Mania 4 card getting built for April 27th. I love me some BKFC. I don't think this full card is quite developed yet. But in the card thus far, the headliner, Mike Perry, taking on Thiago Alves. That is going to be really good. Ben Rothwell becoming a BKFC stud and OG. Ex-UFC fighter looking to take on Todd Duffy. And then Lorenzo Hunt fighting Mick Terrell. Those are the three fights thus far. But really excited to see Thiago Alves take on Mike Perry. That just sounds like a ton of carnage, blood, and chaos. And speaking of BKFC, Jorge Masvidal has been putting on his promotion. He had the Gamebred Barknuckle MMA 7 this past weekend. A lot of ex-UFC talent in the Gamebred Promotions. He's got the connects, We had Junior Dos Santos defeating Alan Belcher via a second round TKO. Alan Belcher really been the kind of staple for heavyweight and Jorge Masvidal's Gamebred promotion. And JDS making slight work of Alan Belcher. Chase Sherman loving the BKFC life or the bare knuckle life. Fought Alex Nicholson. Got a first round knockout as well. We had Henderson Ferreira defeat Carl Robertson via unanimous decision. Carl Robertson, ex-UFC fighter. And recent ex-UFC fighter TJ Brown beating Mandel Nalo via second round submission. I did not catch these. I just saw highlights on social media on Sunday, and I had no clue it was even happening. Speaking of not having a clue of what was happening, we had Jake Paul in another boxing bout co-main eventing Amanda Serrano's fight. Supposedly, Amanda Serrano had some eye issues or something and could not perform on that night. But Jake Paul had a round one knockout, back-to-back round one knockouts against actual boxers, a.k.a. Ryan Borland, who supposedly came out of retirement and was Uber driving for a living. So these are the dudes that Jake Paul is fighting now. He took a loss, wants to move up the boxing ladder board. Well, it seems like he is still at the bottom. And one thing he was doing well was getting views, getting the promotions. And now that he's fighting boxers, good luck with that. But let's talk about the massive boxing fight happening this weekend. We got Francis Ngannou, Anthony Joshua on the eve of UFC 299 in Saudi Arabia. This will be a DAZN pay-per-view event starting at 10 a.m. Eastern. The main event walkout at 6:10 Eastern. That can't be right. That long of a card? Maybe it is. It does take a while. But in the evening, the Francis Ngannou fight, 3 title fights on the card. I am not a boxing savant unless it's big names like Anthony Joshua. I don't know the champions, but seems like a decent boxing card. Let's see what Francis can do in his follow-up boxing fight. You beat Anthony Joshua. I doubt we see him in the PFL anytime soon. He's fighting for heavyweight titles. If he gets starched by Joshua, maybe we see him fight Renan Ferreira in the PFL. I loved the trailer of this fight. The old Super Nintendo throwback trailer. They've really been going all out on their trailers with Francis Ngannou. Saudi Arabia loves him. But yeah, really excited to see how he performs. I actually watched the Ngannou Fury fight. I broke that down many a times and loved how that played out. So excited for this one. And then last night we had UFC Fight Pass Invitational 6. In the main event, Craig Jones making slight work of Rafael Lovato via inside heel hook. Got I think a minute in, got the heel hook submission. In the co-main, we had the Fight Pass Invitational mainstay, Nicky Rodriguez, defeating Roberto Jimenez via points in the second round, 6-0. They have a first round that is just a time-based round of regulation. The second round is a point-scoring round, and Nicky Rod put some points together with an easy takedown, got his back. But Roberto Jimenez put up one hell of a battle in the first regulation round. Then we had the very good Nicholas Marigali defeating Matheus Diniz via rear naked choke. And Marigali, after the fight, said that he can beat anyone. He is ready for anybody, training with John Danaher, Gordon Ryan, and crew. He feels like he's ready for the best of the best, and he has looked like that. And he said he could have got the finish earlier, but he likes Matheus Diniz, so he's excited to not have to fight somebody that he likes. We had a quality fight, Mason Fowler defeating Pedro Marinho via arm triangle choke. I talk about it all the time, love me an arm triangle. That was a very competitive fight. We had Victor Hugo defeating Roosevelt Souza via rear naked choke. Victor Hugo is an animal, a stud, and he was just too much for Roosevelt in that match. Really exciting fight here, probably the most fun one of the evening. Ronaldo Jr. defeating Cody Still via unanimous decision, but although it went to decision, Ronaldo Jr. making just brilliant jiu-jitsu plays, pulling guard, wrestling up, doing the whole thing, and Cody still with a massive suplex. If you are a grappling fan, I am sure you saw that. I mean, bravo to Cody Still there, and Cody's still looking to make his UFC debuts here soon. So a lot of guys trying to work their way up. They're in the Apex fighting in front of a lot of UFC brass, so can really, promote what they have. We had Nicky Rod's brother, Jay Rodriguez, defeating Jonathan Alves via rear naked choke. I mean, Jay Rodriguez looks like the real deal. I had not seen him grapple yet. His first Fight Pass event. Had no idea that Nick even had a little brother. And boy, is he a solid submission grappler. We had potential future UFC prospect Gigi Canuto defeating Denise Gomez. I heard it as Denise Gomez. I've heard Denise Gomes. Everyone says something different. I haven't had the chance to obviously ask Denise what it is. I like to pronounce names the right way. Denise Gomez definitely makes sense with her heritage, so I'm going to go with Denise Gomez via inside heel hook. Hard-fought regulation round in overtime. Gigi getting that heel hook pretty quickly. And then Raquel Canuto defeating Carol Hossa via rear naked choke. Gomez and Carol Hossa in the UFC. The young Canuto ladies getting the job done. But look for Gigi Canuto. She looks to be quite the prospect coming in to the UFC sooner than later. And Cody's still looking to make his way in as a grappling heavy fighter as well. But that was what's going on in MMA this weekend. And just all of the mixed martial arts. Again, had no idea the Gamebred or Jake Paul fight was going on. But hyped for, honestly, this UFC Fight Night card. Because I did it early, I realized I didn't count my total on my picks. So let me put in the picks real quick. We'll just run it down. So UFC Vegas 87, I got the main event, one of the only few that picked Biggie Boy as the underdog. There's levels to this game, and I knew Shamil was going to get humbled in this fight. Got that right. Vitor Petrino, slight work. Got that right. Muhammad Makayev, Umar Nurmagomedov, although he almost got slept. Steve Erceg swept the main event. Should have parlayed that. Got Eric Anders right. I got Javid Basharat wrong. So I'm 6-1. CLD right, 7-1. Ludovic Klein right, 8-1. So I was 8-1. That's what I'm freaking talking about. I need that luck heading into Miami. Get some good bets going on. Get some moolah paid for my trip. So that puts us at 240 wins, 108 losses, and 5 no contests in 38 episodes. We have more than doubled the win total from the losses. And yearly, that puts me at 47, 22, and 2. So more than double the losses on wins as well. And a fight that we did not break down, we had Ludovic Klein getting slight work with a round 1 knockout over AJ Cunningham. I mean, Ludovic was minus 900 odds. I think this was a short notice fill-in fight, so no surprise there. But we're going to kick this off in the prelims, where we had Christian Leroy Duncan with a round 2 TKO over Claudio Ribeiro. And I honestly thought this fight was going to be a banger. I thought this was going to be a competitive back and forth affair, and that was not the case at all. From the start of the fight, CLD was the fighter that actually pushed the pace and came forward. He put it on Claudio early and often. And all Claudio really did was sit there in the middle and kind of stand as a little bit of a moving target. No good footwork, no head movement. And I'm not sure if the apex got to him or what the heck it was, because I don't even know what Claudio's game plan was. He's usually aggressive. He comes in with big strikes, and he somewhat just froze up. Although CLD did put a good striking arsenal in early with some nice combos, some nice kicks. You never know if, he had a bad weight cut, there's an injury, maybe he got injured early. It just did not seem like Claudio Ribeiro that we've come to know. But CLD was able to even get a takedown his first official takedown in, I think, his pro career, at least in the UFC, pretty much with ease. He was teeing off Claudio the rest of the fight and got a early finish in round 2. Kind of a weird showing for Claudio. I'll just wrap that up as a bad day in the office. But CLD is the real deal. I mean, the stats tell the story here. CLD landed 75 total strikes, 65 of those significant. He had 1 takedown and 2 attempts, which is a shocker to everybody. And Claudio only landed 13 total strikes, 4 of which were significant. So CLD extends his winning streak to 2. He is 3-1 in the UFC. And Claudio extends his losing streak to 2. He is 2-3 in the UFC. So what's next for CLD? I would like to see him fight the heavy-hitting Abdul Razak Al Hassan. I think that'd be a fun scrap. And for Claudio, how about Dusko Todorovic? That would be the one to make. Then in the prelims, a little bit of a shocker here. We had Ayman Zahabi with a unanimous decision over the once undefeated Javid Basharat. And I knew this fight was going to be closer than the odds suggested. Let me see if I could find the odds on this real quick. I want to say it's like minus 400 to minus 500 that they had Basharat at. Minus 900 plus 600 for Ayman Zahabi. I figured Ayman was going to put Javid to a test, show him some nice veteran things. You know, he's coming off 3 finishes. But I did not think Ayman would be able to defend Javid's takedowns for 3 rounds, let alone push the pace, out cardio the younger Javid. And Ayman, as he has been, that nice little right hand of his, he's been throwing just big, loopy, heavy right hands. Early in the fight, he was getting a lot of air, a lot of whiffs that I was like, man, this guy's going to tire out. But he did not tire out at all. He did land a lot of big shots. He definitely early landed the more damaging strikes pretty much each and every round. And this was the first time that we've really seen, by round 3, Javid show any kind of resemblance in his body language of being tired, and he was tired. Massive credit to Ayman, who at 36 years old, technically kind of the end of your prime. The prime window for me at this moment is age 30 to 35. I think in the next 10 years, it's going to go younger. And my methodology here is that it takes so long just to get to the UFC. By the time you're there, you're damn near 30 anyways, so that's your fighting prime. You've added all the tricks of the trade. You know your strengths or weaknesses. You're who you are, and you're fighting the best version of yourself in the best shape. But these young kids are getting, you know, the way it's been in the past 10 years, you go through high school, maybe you're an Olympic grappler, sambo, taekwondo, something. Then you come into MMA, you realize you might have an opportunity, you like to fight, you're one of those sickos that likes to fight. Then you go to a gym, you start training, you're already in your mid to late 20s, then you really start going for it. These young kids now are going to graduate high school knowing they want to go into the MMA circuit. There's more training facilities, more gyms, more UFC PIs around the world. Then they could go straight in and learn the whole arsenal, focus on the MMA or the martial arts that they like the most, find their strengths and weaknesses, and by mid-20s, maybe their prime starting. But at now, 30 to 35, so Zahabi fighting once a year, only 3 fights the past 3 years, coming against this young, you know, very talented dude who's undefeated, cardio machine, tires him out at 36 years old. That is a massive props that needs to be provided here. And Zahabi, you know, he's fighting at the highest level at the edge of his prime, which in these weight classes, especially flyweight to, I would say, welterweight, is a lot more rare than maybe the bigger dudes. Because the bigger dudes, they're not real full MMA artists. Usually they're just boxers, kickboxers. You could still hit or be hit. It's a little bit different of a flair as you age. So massive props to Zahabi. I thought this would be a close fight. I still picked Javid, but I did not see this coming. And the fact that he was plus 600 odds, I mean, I wish I just had some money to sprinkle on that one. But statistically, Ayman landed 77 total strikes, 75 of those significant. Javid landed 67 total, 67 of those significant. He was 0 for 4 in takedown attempts. And I don't remember Javid landing, you know, all of his strikes as hard strikes compared to Ayman's. I felt like Ayman landed a lot more significant strikes than Javid. But again, Javid, huge learning experience here. I'm sure he's going to be better than ever. He's still such a young fighter. Him and his brother pushing each other. The camps and gyms they train at, world class. But this was all about Ayman Zahabi. So Javid obviously ends that undefeated winning streak. He now moves to 4-1-1 in the UFC since 2021. Ayman extends his winning streak to 4. He hasn't lost since May of 2019, but again, has only fought once a year, so hopefully we could see him at least another time, maybe multiple times this year after that showcase. So what's next? Well, the no contest that Javid had was the accidental groin strike to Victor Henry. I actually wouldn't mind the UFC rebooking that, especially after Javid losing in this fight. Let's say that's not the case. How about Yoni Barcelos? Yoni, however you say that. And for Ayman, I would love to see him square up with someone like Cody Stamann. Move right up, right outside the top 15. He deserves it. But again, Zahabi, man, what a absolute showing. Not many sports do you get plus 600 dogs like that come out of nowhere. That's what you got to love about the UFC. Moving on, we had Eric Anders with the unanimous decision over Jamie Pickett. And, you know, I'm pretty excited for this fight as they're getting the fighter walkouts. It's two heavy-hitting dudes. They could be potentially fighting for their UFC careers in this fight. And I think it's that Charlie something who works for ESPN was doing this Apex event. Seems like she's wanting to get into the UFC or MMA in general. And she started the fight just letting us know that before the fight, Jamie Pickett told her he plans to retire after the fight, was saying he wants to focus on his businesses. He owns storage, like, not storage sheds, but you want to go use a storage, you go to the storage place. He has some of those. I don't know why I can't think of that. It's Monday evening. I've had a long day, I guess. And run some other businesses. And he wants to work on his passion of riding bulls. So if you know, Dana White has one of the nastiest bulls in the circuit. He was calling for Dana to allow him to ride that bull. But yeah, I mean, this fight started off weird with that. But man, did Jamie come out hot. He had a very good first round, landed some serious power shots on Eric, and was damn close to getting the finish. But round 2 was a different story. Eric continued to look for takedowns. He looked like the fresher fighter, like Pickett kind of went for broke in his last fight before retirement. He was able to steal round 2, even though Jamie still landed some strikes and had some moments. And then round 3, Eric just went straight after it, got the takedown early in the round. Fairly easy because Jamie was getting a little worn out at this point. And he controlled the fight, grounded and pounded his way to victory. Not a terrible way for Jamie to go out as he damn near finished a very tough Eric Anders. But that was not how the fight finished. But either way, bravo to Jamie on a good career. I mean, just to give you a little bit of perspective, Eric in round 1 landed 20 total strikes and a takedown, but in 6 attempts. And Jamie only landed 9 total, 8 significant, but had that knockdown. So just big power shots, outstruck him, or got the knockdown, and then the rest of the fight, it was all volume via Eric Anders. Let's see. Statistically, Eric landed 83 total strikes, only 23 significant, a lot of ground and pound. He had 5 takedowns in 13 attempts, so he was going forward after getting rocked. And he had 10 minutes of control time. Jamie landed 26 total strikes, 20 of those significant with a knockdown of his own. So obviously Jamie's retiring. Congrats to Jamie for a solid UFC career. Jamie, he ends his career on a 5-fight losing streak. His last win came in January of 2022. But Eric ends his 1-fight losing streak. He does start a new winning streak. He is 2-2 since 2022. Well, for Eric, I think the next fight should be against Abus Magomedov. Eric getting some quality wins, looking to be sharp and improve the best version of himself. Let's give him a boost. That would be a fantastic fight for us fans. Because I'm a fan, I'm the biggest fan. Moving on to the main card, we had Astro Boy, man. Steve Erceg with a round 2 knockout over Matt Schnell. And Schnell definitely had his moments at some point. I was pretty confident in Steve, but I thought this was going to be a closer fight. But what a performance. Astro Boy is flying up. His stock is booming. He's coming to the UFC and made his mark. I mean, the only success Matt really had was in round 1. He clipped Steve really late in the round and almost got a finish. Steve got saved by the bell. But other than that, man, Steve was outboxing the shit out of him for 3+ minutes that entire first round. And at the start of the second round, Matt was standing right in the range of Steve. And boy, did he just land this beautiful clean left hook. And it just completely shut Matt's lights off. A little bit of a scary sight. But a massive win and showcase for Steve Erceg. He is putting the flyweight division on notice. Statistically, he landed 34 total insignificant strikes. He had a knockdown and was 0 for 1 in takedown attempts. And Matt landed 25 total strikes, 22 of which were significant. So Steve extends his winning streak to 11. He moves to 3-0 in the UFC. Matt extends his losing streak to 2. He is only 1-3 since 2022. So what's next for these flyweights? Well, with that showcase, I think Steve needs to fight somebody like Manel Kape. It's rumored Alexandre Pantoja is going to be the Rio de Janeiro headliner as champion. There's not a clear-cut opportunity for him. Maybe a Manel Kape fight, but I think Steve deserves a scrap with Manel Kape for the top of the division. He did call for Brandon Moreno after the fight, and that definitely would be an amazing fight and would be a possibility. I just don't know if Brandon's going to take that after back-to-back losses. So for Matt, how about somebody like David Dvorak? I think that'd be a great fight. Coming off a couple tough losses himself, looking to move back up the top 15. And let's look. I have it up. At a minus 1,200 favorite, Umar Nurmagomedov got the unanimous decision over Bekzat Almakhan. But it might have been a little bit more spicy than people had predicted because there was a few of these. A couple guys got starched, saved by the bell. Umar, right away, boom, big right hand that seemed to just clip the top of the head. Sat Umar down. He immediately went in for a leg and went to grapple his way to victory. And Daniel Cormier on his new good guy, bad guy, or whatever it is, show with Chael Sonnen, said he talked to Umar because he's close with these guys. From AKA, and he said that he didn't even know what was going on until he watched the film back, so completely was stunned. What an amazing shot for Bekzat to make his UFC debut. He rocked him, knocked him down, but he got to learn what a Nurmagomedov does best, man. He got one of his legs quick, got him down, and really did that for the rest of the fight. A lot of control time, landed a ton of ground and pound on his way to victory, didn't just lay on him. Was doing enough offensively to keep the positions. But Umar, supposedly, he said after the fight, has been battling injuries, including a hand injury he suffered during camp. He wasn't going to keep striking with Bekzat after that big shot. Was just going to wrestle his way to victory, and especially if he has an injury, no surprise there. But let's paint a little picture of the landscape prior to this fight. Umar, let me confirm before I just say this, but I'm pretty positive Umar was at one point booked against Corey Sandhagen and it didn't happen. Or maybe that was one of those random accounts online that makes you think shit. No, he was scheduled to face Corey August 5th. Nurmagomedov withdrew, was replaced by Rob Font. So this was a booked fight. He's looking to fight the best of the best in the top of the division. Coming into the fight, he was already ranked in the top 15 at 13. Nobody could fight him. Nobody wants to fight a person with a last name Nurmagomedov, let alone an undefeated fighter who can do a lot of things well like Umar can. So they bring in this young stud. I think this guy's 26 years old. I don't know if he was undefeated, but really good pro record. Comes in, almost starches Umar immediately. But either way, a crazy situation for Umar to take the fight. Some random dude, you're confident in your ability. You're one of the best in the world. He was about to fight the best in the world. So it's just a weird situation. But I'm glad that Umar was able to keep that undefeated streak so we could see him fight some of the best. But I think Bekzat earned his way into the UFC, and if he's not, he will be there shortly. Statistically, Umar landed 145 total strikes, 68 of those significant. He had 5 takedowns and 11 minutes and 26 seconds of control time. So more than 2 of the 3 rounds, he was in control on top. Now, Bekzat landed 5 total and 3 significant strikes with the knockdown. He was trying to defend wrestling and try to attempt some BJJ, which I don't know if he's the best at for most of the fight. So Umar stays undefeated, 16-fight winning streak, 5-0 in the UFC. Bekzat ends his 8-fight winning streak and starts a new losing streak in his UFC debut. So back to the precursor to this fight, Umar called for Corey Sandhagen again in his post-fight interview. I think for a title eliminator fight, that's the best fight to have. But who knows in the bantamweight division? Sean wins it. You think Merab would be next if he fights in the bantamweight and doesn't fight Ilia Topuria, which I think he should defend the title personally. I think Ilia should as well. So if that's the case, then you have the other people at the top of the division like Corey waiting anyways. Title eliminator for the next shot. I think that would be so much fun. Now, if Henry's, or no, wait. And for Bekzat, how about a veteran, still solid fighter like Miles Johns? I think he proved he deserves an opportunity. So crazy, scary performance at the beginning, but Umar grappling his way to victory. And speaking about grappling your way to victory, Muhammad Mokaev with a unanimous decision over Alex Perez. And, Muhammad controlled the fight. He definitely had to work hard for everything he got in this fight. He had more volume in strikes pretty much every round than Alex. And as he usually does, is literally like Merab, the Machine Dvalishvili. I say the Machine. That comes from Joe Rogan every time he breaks down Yoel Romero. If you listen to the MMA shows, I'm sure you heard of him. He said, "Who is this guy?" The doctor, he said, they make us machines in Cuba. So for Merab, he's a machine. He's not the machine, he's a machine. But anyways, he does his best machine impression and just goes broke for takedowns. I mean, Jesus. That's got to be tough for Alex, who is a solid grappler. And for the most part, did a solid job defending the takedowns and forcing Muhammad to exert himself over 15 minutes. But after the fight, Muhammad said he woke up sick the morning of the weigh-ins or the morning of the fight. You don't know how that affected him. He did somewhat tire compared to what we've seen him in a 15-minute fight, but he still looks solid. So you don't know how much that affected him. He was playing, Alex was playing defense majority of this fight. He wasn't able to do much besides, trying to get his own offense going because of the relentless takedown attempts. But for Alex, only getting one fight since 2020, you never know how that's going to play out. We just had Brian Ortega in Mexico City last weekend after the time off. But overall, Muhammad Mokaev is a problem. Alex Perez looked pretty darn good. I thought he looked competitive in the grappling and striking in this fight. So good takeaways, although that's a tough loss for a man in his prime. And Muhammad's 23 years old. But it was a close fight. It was, for the most part. Just to give you a perspective, in round 1, Muhammad landed 32 strikes to Alex's 12. He was 1-6 in takedowns, so was relentless, only got 1. Alex in round 2 landed 18 strikes to Muhammad's 9. Muhammad still only got 1 takedown, but on 7 attempts. And then round 3, Alex landed 17 strikes to Muhammad's 15. Again, Muhammad only 1 takedown on 7 attempts. So he was doing so good defending those, but after a while, Muhammad finally got him, and those were the ones that really made the difference. So over the course of the fight, Muhammad landed 64 total strikes, 60 of those significant. He only had 3 takedowns in 20 attempts. Brutal. But he did get 4 minutes and 29 seconds worth of control time. That's almost a full round. Alex landed 52 total strikes, 12 less overall, and 29 significant strikes. He did have 3 minutes and 44 seconds of control time himself. So I figured this would be a good measuring stick for Muhammad. It was even sick the day of the fight. He still got the job done. And let me confirm. I'm sure if you guys are watching this, you watch most of my episodes. But yeah, Muhammad only 23. I mean, sheesh. Keeps calling for that title. Now, Muhammad stays undefeated. He's on a 12-fight winning streak, 6-0 in the UFC. Alex extends his losing streak to 3. He has not won since June of 2020. So where do these flyweights go? I think Muhammad, he called for that quick title shot against Pantoja. It's supposed to happen at 301. I don't think that's going to happen. I do think he needs another win to fight for the title. And I think the fight to make, give him Brandon Moreno, man. That fight would be fantastic. That would be a great opportunity for Brandon to come back to relevancy with the big, young, undefeated name, and for Muhammad to fight his way to the title if he earns it over the baby face assassin. For Alex, I mean, when you don't fight as much as you do, I doubt you're getting roses by the UFC brass. A fight that makes sense for him in the rankings would be Tagir Ulanbekov. You know, that's another good grappler. I doubt he wants to see that, but for him not being active, if you want to fight in the top 15, there you go. And that's a good fight. Moving on. These light heavyweights, boy. We had Vitor Petrino with a unanimous decision over Tyson Pedro. And some of these themes in this card were playing a lot of the themes of what we have this weekend. You had a lot of OGs taking on these young up-and-comers, right? So in the Zahabi fight, we had Javid trying to prove himself in the bantamweight division against the hot finishing Ayman Zahabi. Ayman said, you ain't ready yet. Then we had Matt Schnell trying to defend his, Matt Schnell's been around for a while, man, in the UFC, around promotions. Steve Erceg, new to the UFC, flying, little Astro boy. Well, Steve said, I'm ready. Matt Schnell, you go back in the rankings. Umar clearly damn near did it, but showed the UFC newcomer he's got a long ways to go. Muhammad Mokaev earning himself into the top of the division over a very good mainstay in the flyweights and Alex Perez. And then we had Vitor Petrino trying to prove his worth against the guy who was the prospect, just like Vitor, the big, hard-hitting dude. Then he had all those injuries. But Vitor Petrino, unanimous decision over Tyson Pedro. And I expected this to be a little bit of a close fight, a little bit of a learning lesson for Vitor because he is so raw. Some of that was true, but overall, this was just a solid fight, man. A great learning experience for Vitor. He ended up just being too much, too strong. I mean, the guy is built like a brick shithouse, too powerful, and too athletic for a very good, powerful, and athletic Pedro. But Pedro, he has an amazing team, and I figured this would come into play. I mean, he had a great game plan. He was more technical of a fighter over the course of the 3 rounds. He had better footwork than Petrino. He was controlling the fight, and where he wanted the fight to go, it went. But Tyson wasn't able to get the job done over the course of 3 rounds. Vitor hits too hard, he's too fast, he's too raw, he's too athletic, and that was the difference in this fight. Tyson Pedro, after the fight, had a moment, retired from the UFC in the post-fight interview. Kind of crazy that we had 2 fighters retiring and did not know until coming into the evening. But Tyson Pedro, honestly, after his injuries, had quite a run. He's only 32 years old. I guess in the post-fight, you get a post-fight interview in the octagon, then there's a press conference. I don't usually watch the press conferences besides Dana White. But supposedly Tyson was talking about how he's broke and he's going to go rob a car in the parking lot because he can't make any money in the UFC. It's a joke, but I know there's a lot of guys that can't make money in the UFC. You look at his UFC career, he only had 1 performance of the night. That was his UFC debut in 2016. After surgeries, which all that time, if you're a fighter, how do you make money? He was off for 4 years. That's a long time. But he had a knockout and a TKO, no performance of the nights, no bonuses in 2022. Beat Ike Villanueva, Harry Hunsucker, lost to Modestus Bukakis, knocked out Anton Turkali. That should have been at least a performance, didn't get a performance. And then Vitor Petrino. So 10 wins, 5 losses, finished his career at 3-2 since his injuries. So great career. It's just, the UFC is tough, especially if you're battling injuries. But looking at the stats over the course of the fight, Vitor landed 33 total strikes, 27 of those significant. He had 3 takedowns in 5 attempts and 5 minutes and 24 seconds of control time. So not a lot of strikes landed. A lot of these big, hard-hitting dudes filling themselves out. But Vitor did control at least a full round with control time. Tyson landed 33 total strikes as well. 3 more significant strikes in 30. He was 0 for 2 in takedown attempts. So it was a damn close fight. I thought it was real. It was going to come down to the wire. Vitor stole round 3. That was the difference. But Pedro against a very young stud was in there doing it. Maybe he's a little bit emotional. Maybe he doesn't like the UFC. Doesn't have a good relationship with them. I'm not sure. But he shows to me that he can still fight, especially in a shallow light heavyweight division. And he's only 32. But who knows how his body's feeling. There's so much to think about. So Vitor stays undefeated, 11-fight winning streak, 5-0 in the UFC. Again, Tyson ends his UFC career with a loss, 3-2 since his return from injuries in 2022. Now, Vitor, after the fight, called for Anthony Smith. I'm not opposed to that fight. I doubt Anthony Smith wants to fight that fight. For that reason, I am going to say Dustin Jacoby. Anthony's fought a lot of young up-and-comers, trying to get momentum and that confidence back. You don't take a Vitor Petrino if that's the situation. But Dustin Jacoby's been there. He's fought all the young up-and-comers. He'll welcome him into an opportunity for the top 15. That's a freaking certified scrap, man. And once again, congrats to Tyson and Jamie Pickett on their careers. In the main event, your boy, Biggie Boy, Jairzinho Rozenstruik, 4th round TKO over Shamil Gaziev. It was a weird main event stop. It just seems like Shamil got sick of being jabbed in the face and gave up. In my opinion, call me brash, call me whatever. That seemed like the case. The play-by-play guys were saying maybe that the corner, the fighter was telling the doctor he can't see, which his eyes weren't closed. I don't know what's going on there. And then his corner was kind of convincing him you need to fight. It seems like they were probably under the same assumption as I was. Like, toughen up. You got one more round. You're main eventing, bro. Like, your brand is on the line. But Shamil, he had a great first round. I mean, good strikes, had a takedown. Jairzinho definitely had his moments, his moment in round 1 as well. But round 1, that was the Shamil that everyone expected, besides your boy here. But the difference, and the crazy thing that they even do this to this day, is that we got to remember that these big dudes are fighting in a smaller octagon in the Apex, 5-round fight. That's just, it's a weird situation for an Apex main card, man. Main event. But every minute the fight wore on, Shamil tired a little bit more, and Biggie Boy took control with his kicks to eliminate that power, eliminate him coming forward, and just jabbed him to death for 2+ rounds, man. Literally rounds 3 and 4, Jairzinho, boom to the nose, boom to the nose. Shamil's like walking around. I got my Invisalign in with his mouth guard and just taking shots with his mouth open because he can't breathe. Just taking jabs, man. Gaziev tried some sloppy takedowns. Jairzinho was able to defend, which is a big improvement for him where he's at in his career, although Shamil's attempts weren't great. But it's just sloppy. I mean, they bring some of these guys in. They have some good performances early. You really got to get some dudes out of round 1, and they're a different type of dude. And this guy's not like a young prospect. He's 34. He's almost at the edge of his prime. Came in 2023 after the Contender Series, so maybe at 20 or 33 years old, came into the UFC. He fought Brave. He's only been pro fighting since 2020. He amateur fought for 2 years, so he just started late, giving it a run. But, dude, in the UFC main freaking event, and you're going to just get jabbed in the face and quit. They thought this guy was ready. 8 of his 12 wins are via knockout. In the UFC, he had only beat Greg Velasco and Martin Buday. On Sherdog, it's saying that he retired. Oh, it's a retirement of the fighter, probably. No. Everyone's just saying he quit. Yeah. Regardless, it's like, there's levels to this game. Shamil Gaziev ain't on that level. He didn't pass my sniff test, the light radar, and I called it. Biggie Boy is a freaking professional. He's a kickboxing. Now he's defending his takedowns, and he's going to go for it. And boy, did he. Jairzinho landed 140 total strikes. 122 of those were significant. He was 0 for 1 in takedown attempts. I don't remember that takedown attempt, but that would have been hilarious. Actually, I do. I think late, when Shamil basically gave up with his mouth open. But Shamil landed 43 total strikes, 41 of those significant. He had 1 takedown in 7 attempts. The 1 takedown was early. He had 4 minutes and 32 seconds of control time. So Jairzinho now starts a new winning streak. He is 2-2 since 2022. And Shamil suffers his first pro loss, ends his 12-fight winning streak, and is now 2-1 in the UFC since his Contender Series contract. So what's next for the big dogs? Give me a war. Give me Biggie Boy and Sergey Spivak. And for Shamil, he could fight the young and rolling Waldo Salsa Boy Cortez Acosta. I think that would be a good learning lesson for both of those dudes. I just want to lose my shit right now, because it's like, how can I even try to explain the intensity of what's going on? And as a fight fan that grew up in the middle of nowhere, Montana, never thinking I could even go to sporting events, now living in a sports hub mecca in Phoenix, an MMA mecca, becoming more of an MMA fan than any, or UFC fan than any other sport, which I was always a big UFC fan, but I didn't think I would have the joy and the excitement of it over the NFL and some other sports, NBA, maybe even MLB. But here we are, man. And this card, I really do think has potential to be the best UFC card ever. Like, literally ever. From top to bottom, this is insane. And that's crazy, because next up is another one that might be able to break it. I can't wait to see how it shows down. At the beginning of the year in January, I ranked the cards of how I thought they would play out with potential. But golly, man, going to Miami, flying out there Thursday with a couple of my friends also from Montana. We got the 406 in the building, man. But UFC 299, the early prelims, which, yes, you should watch the early prelims. We're breaking every fight down on this card because there's no bad fights. Well-known fighters, competitive fights. This shit is the real deal. If you haven't paid on ESPN Plus, I don't get sales, obviously don't get any of this. It's a $10 discount if you buy it early. I highly recommend doing so. Don't get the bootleg stream on this one, boys and girls. Early prelims, 3 p.m. Pacific, UFC Fight Pass. Sometimes they have them on ESPN Plus. I don't know if they will or not. The prelims going down at 5 p.m. Pacific on ESPN mainstream TV. That'll be 8 p.m. Eastern before the prelims. It's going to be weird watching the UFC on the East Coast. It's going to be like 1 a.m. when it's done. It's going to be a Saturday for the boys. But, man, we are going to do a quick run through before we're breaking this down. It's like I said, this ain't no BS. We're talking potential best UFC pay-per-view ever. And Miami goes nuts. We got Chito Marlon Vera from Ecuador. I'm sure he's going to have people there going nuts. In the early prelims, we have ex-contender Joanne Wood starting the night. CJ Vergara, UFC veteran in the flyweight division, taking on a young up-and-comer. We have Robelis de Spain, amazing taekwondo artist, amazing striker, getting his chops early in the heavyweight division, showcasing his talent against Josh Parisian. We have one of the most insane, crazy strikers in UFC history, Michelle Pereira, fighting on the card. Two dogs headlining the early prelims in Jan Cutelaba, Felipe Lins. And then it's just a lot of young guns taking on proven vets. And we're going to see who comes out on top. We have Pedro Munoz taking on Kyler Phillips. Kyler Matrix Phillips, one of MMA Labs, Red Hawk Academy studs, taking on one of the OGs. We have Mateusz Gamrot taking on RDA. Mateusz Gamrot has been a stud in the UFC, but he's taken on potentially one of the dudes with the best UFC career records as a former champion at 39 years old, has 47 professional fights. Let's see if Gamer can be good enough to defeat the legend in RDA. We have literally the future Macy Barber taking on the probably one of the ladies that I've just UFC fighters, men or women, that have had the number one next to their name for the longest. Caitlin Kukagian, formerly known as Caitlin Kukagian, now as Caitlin Sarmanara. She got married. Taking on Macy Barber. I mean, you want to talk about a test, this is as good as it gets. Basically, Macy getting a low-key title fight opportunity. Then Curtis Blades, the best full package heavyweight grappler striker, taking on Jailton Almeida, who might be a younger, better version of that. Let's see if he's good and ready to beat Curtis Blades today, just in the prelims. Then the main card, we got Pewter Yan, Song Yadong, Chinese hope for a UFC champion, taking on the former bantamweight champion. So young versus older, or, OG versus youngin. We got the youngin Jack Della Maddalena taking on Gilbert Darino Burns in Miami. I mean, I am going to be going nuts for Gilbert Burns at that point. We got Big Mouth on the card. Kevin Holland welcoming Bellator's finest in Michael Page, so not a young versus old there. We have the young Benoit Saint-Denis taking on one of the most veteran legend active fighters today in the Diamond, Dustin Poirier. See if he's ready for the best of the best in the toughest division in the UFC, in my opinion, with the lightweight division. And then the rematch, not young versus old here, Sean O'Malley, the Sugar Show, taking on Cheeto Marlon Vera. And we got to remember, the only reason Marlon Vera is getting a title fight after losing and getting a win over Pedro Munoz, a boring decision win, is because he supposedly got the first win and he gets that rematch. Sean knew it would be a hyped fight later in his career. He put his chips all in on black, per se, and boy, did it pay off. So, again, no fights we aren't leaving out. We are breaking down all of 299. Let's go. In the early prelims, we have Joanne JoJo Wood, 38 years old with a 16-8 record, taking on Marina, the Iron Lady Mirage, 32 years old with an 11-5 record. Again, the fact that this is an opening fight in the entire card in the early prelims just proves the point of how stacked this card is. JoJo, she's an OG for women's MMA. She really is. I was excited to see her in Salt Lake City. Did not make it happen. It's going down in Miami. She's a little bit older these days, but she's looking to stack up some wins after losing to the best that the division has to offer. A lot of the contenders the past few years. And again, a little bit younger versus older. Marina is looking to stack up some positive momentum, in her prime and really make a name for herself in the UFC. Breaking it down, Joanne has a kickboxing style. She trains at a Syndicate MMA. She has a purple belt in BJJ. She was the ISKA World Flyweight Karate Champion. She's the 2012 Newcomer of the Year. She's on a one-fight winning streak and is 1-1 since 2022. 5 of her 8 losses are via submission, and she is an Invicta and Cage Warriors alum. Now, Marina trains out of ATT. She is a master of sport in kickboxing and boxing, which, again, I think that really just translates to like a black belt here. That's like a foreign, you're a master of sport. 2 of her last 4 fights have been fight of the night or performance of the night. She's been doing the dang thing. She's on a 2-fight losing streak, and her last win was in March of 2022, and 6 of her 11 wins are via submission. Now, when it comes to really picking here, this is a very evenly matched fight. I think we will see this fight go everywhere and anywhere. If it's going to go 3 rounds, I think it's just going to be chaos. I do think the younger Marina is going to have the striking speed advantage. The opportunity for a submission may present itself. It's really hard because Joanne hasn't been so super active. I really want to pick her, and I almost am changing my mind mid podcast here. But let's look. So JoJo since 2022, she beat Luana Carolina, but in a very close split decision. I do not like that it was that close, to be honest. Then she lost to Talia Santos, Alexa Grasso, and Lauren Murphy, beat Jessica Ai in 2021. So she's fought really, really good people, but her last win really just left a lot to be desired. Maybe age is catching up with her. Marina, she has lost to Karine Silva, very good Karine Silva, lost to Jennifer Maia by decision, beat Maria Agapova, defeated Mayra Buena Silva in 2020. So it's freaking difficult, man. But I'm going to go with the younger fighter here. Age has not done well for many fighters. I think it's razor thin. I will not put this on a parlay. I'm rooting for JoJo at heart. Moving on. We have Asu Zulfikar Almadeyev, 30 years old with an 18-2 record, taking on CJ Vergara, 32 years old with a 12-4 record, 12-4-1 record. And this is another fun competitive fight. In this fight, we're getting 2 dudes in their primes, well-rounded fighters. You know, CJ just has more UFC experience, competing in the flyweight division for quite some time, but he's really struggled to get that highlight victory. I actually picked against him in my last in-person UFC event in Salt Lake City, and he got the win. He was hanging out by the, you move out of the stadium, because it's at basketball stadiums. You go in the corridor, concourse, whatever you want to say, of where all the vendors are. He was just hanging out, taking photos with the fans. His face is all beat up. He was just having a good time. Really cool dude. He just needs that highlight win, man. But Asu, he scored a very, very impressive and quality win against over Odie Osborne in his UFC debut in August. Breaking it down, Asu is an M1 and Brave alum. He's on a 14-fight winning streak, and 9 of his 8 wins are via submission. Now, CJ has a Muay Thai style. He's an orthodox fighter. He's a Legacy FC, RFA, and Contender Series alum. 7 of his 12 wins are via knockout, and 2 of his 4 losses are via submission. He's on a 2-fight winning streak. He is 3-1 since 2022, and he does have a 3-inch reach advantage in this fight. Now, I do think this is going to be a great test for both men. They're obviously going to try to move up the flyweight ladder board. And for CJ, this is another chance to defeat a new face in the UFC, boost his stock, get better quality fights. And for Asu, I think he's really going to have a simple game plan. It's going to be to grapple and smash CJ. But I believe CJ is going to do a good job defending takedowns, look to get his striking going. I do think Asu, later the fight goes, is eventually going to have some success. He's going to grind some of the wins out, or the rounds out, get that top control, get that ground and pound, maybe get a potential submission finish. For that reason, I'm taking Asu Almadeyev. But again, I'm avoiding this on any parlay for sure. Not if possible, but show. Then moving on, one of the intrigues on the card, we have Robelis, not Biggie Boy, the Biggie Boy, to Spain, 35 years old with an undefeated 4-0 record, taking on Josh Parisian, 34 years old with a 15-7 record. Now, what makes this fight fun is we get to see the debut of the Taekwondo stud heavyweight, which is kind of a weird mix, a big dude like that with a Taekwondo type background in striking. But the dude has absolutely demolished his competition. Cruised through everybody, quick first round knockouts in Titan FC and Fury FC. And now he is fighting a veteran heavyweight fighter in the UFC who's in his prime at 34 and absolutely needs some sort of success. He is skilled. He is pretty well-rounded. This will be a fun one. So breaking it down, obviously Robelis has a Taekwondo style with a black belt in Taekwondo. He won bronze in 2013 and 15 at the Taekwondo Heavyweight Championships. He's a Titan FC alum, and all 4 of his wins are via knockout. If you want to check them out, they're viral knockouts, man. Meanwhile, Josh is a King of the Cage, LFA, and Contender Series alum. He's on a 2-fight losing streak and is 1-2 since 2022. 11 of his 15 wins are via knockout. Now, I would assume, you can always have a game plan until you're in there and a guy is like doing crazy stuff and you can't think, and maybe you take a shot to the freaking teep kick to the rib or something. But I do think this is going to be a point of emphasis for Josh to try to close distance and pressure Robelis, put his weight on him so he can get in close and just look to make this fight as ugly as possible. You don't want to end up on the highlight reel, be another quick knockout. Josh, I think, is going to try to spend majority of the fight up against the cage. He's not known as a takedown artist, but maybe score a few takedowns. That's easy to say, easier said than done at heavyweight. And for Robelis, I think he's going to have a ton of movement. I think he's going to set up a lot of traps to build those big, powerful shots. I am taking the Taekwondo stud, but I'm avoiding this on a parlay. I could see a world where Josh takes him down easily, absorbs some of the shots, and just lays on him, tries to win that way. And I haven't seen him in the UFC, obviously, so let's see what can happen here. Moving on in the early prelims, still, we have Michael Demolidor Pereira, 30 years old with a 28-11 record, taking on Michael Husar Olegchuk, 29 years old with a 19-6 record. You want to talk about crazy striking matches, man. This is going to be wild. Strikes from anywhere, everywhere. 2 men who are just scratching the surface of their primes. Now, Michel, he's a wild card, man. He'll do a axe kick. He'll do a cartwheel kick. He's one of the more unpredicting striking arsenals in the UFC. And Michael is a loopy and wide striker that comes at different angles with a lot of power. Breaking it down, Michel has a black belt in BJJ, a black belt in karate. His last 2 fights have been fight of the night or performance of the night. 11 of his 29 wins are via knockout, 7 via submission, so 18 of his 29 wins coming via finish. He's a Jungle Fight alum, and he's on a 6-fight winning streak dating back to 2020. Now, Michael has a blue belt in BJJ. 2 of his last 3 fights have been performance of the night. He's on a 1-fight winning streak and is 3-2 since 2022. 14 of his 19 wins are via knockout, and 4 of his 6 losses are via submission. Now, I'd be surprised if this fight went to a decision. I do expect Pereira to be an aggressor in this fight. I could see Michael maybe having some counter success with the aggressiveness of Michel. But Michel's going to put on an insane pace. He's going to look to try to break him throughout the rounds after a lot of damaging shots. And I am going to bet on that. I think the Demolidor continues to stack up wins. For that reason, I'm picking him. We putting him on my parlay. We marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. Moving on. We have a rebooked fight. We have Jan the Hulk Kutalaba, 30 years old with a 17-9-1 record, taking on Felipe Monstro Leans, 38 years old with a 17-5 record. Now, I was stoked about this fight originally. It was originally booked in early October. It was canceled the day of the bout due to Leans being sick. I really am not sure why the fight took so long to happen again, as it's March, but here we are. This is going to be a very intriguing matchup. Two men who have been in the UFC. Jan's only 30, which is wild, but he's got, 26, 27 professional fights. These guys have been around. They've had mixed results. Both men have had success of late, though. They're looking to continue, try to enter the top 15 in the light heavyweight division. Breaking it down, Felipe trains out of ATT. He has a black belt in BJJ. He's a Bellator PFL and PFL alum. He was the champion of the $1 million tournament in the PFL. He's on a 3-fight winning streak. 9 of his 17 wins are via knockout. 4 of his 5 losses are via knockout, to knock out, or to be knocked out. And he even has a 3-inch reach advantage in this fight. Now, Jan is an orthodox fighter. He trains out of the MMA factory. He's on a 1-fight winning streak and is 1-3 since 2022. 13 of his 17 wins are via knockout. 4 of his 9 losses are via submission. Now, again, it's weird that Jan is just now entering his prime. I mean, this dude's got a resume for days already. Let's pull it up. I mean, this dude beat Tanner Boser, lost to Kennedy and Shekwaku, lost to Johnny Walker, lost to Ryan Spann, beat Devin Clark, a draw with Dustin Jacoby, lost to Magomed Ankalaev twice, defeated Khalil Roundtree Jr., lost to Glover Teixeira, lost to Jared Cannonier, lost to Mika Shurkanov. I mean, he has fought a lot of dudes in the UFC since 2016. Here he is now in the middle of his prime. He's fighting another power striker who is full of confidence since coming to the light heavyweight division in the UFC. He did fight at heavyweight for some time. And I believe this is going to be a great fight. Fight of the night potential on a normal card. But this is not a normal card. I do believe the Hulk is going to come out super aggressive. So we will see if Monstro can last through the early barrage. I'm not putting my money on it. I'm liking the Hulk in this one. I'm taking Jan on my parlay. We marking that ish down and we getting that bread. Moving on. We are now in the prelims on ESPN. A lot of the young versus OGs set up here. We have Kyler the Matrix Phillips, 28 years old with an 11-2 record, taking on Pedro the Young Punisher Munoz, 37 years old with a 20-8 record and the number 12 next to his name. I mean, this is ironic. Pedro's nickname is the Young Punisher. He's taking on the young dudes. That's kind of the storyline of the card. But this is a chance, right? Right here, I technically live across the street from Peoria, but right here in Peoria, Arizona, we get the Red Hawk Academy and MMA Lab stud. As both gyms are trying to showcase, they are showcasing how good their 135 talent is. In the MMA Lab, you got Marcus McGee, you got Kyler Matrix, you got Mario Batista, you got the Sugar Show. I mean, they compete day in, day out with the best in the world. Kyler has done very good this far in the UFC. He is now fighting a man past his prime and trying to prove he still belongs in the top 15. But he's getting a young killer in Kyler, who is still raw, a little bit crazy, and has room for improvement. This will be fun. Now, Kyler trains out of the MMA Lab. He is an LFA and Contender Series alum. He's on a 2-fight winning streak. 5 of his 11 wins are via knockout. And he does sport a 7.5-inch reach advantage. Now, Pedro trains out of ATT. He has a black belt in BJJ, a brown belt in Judo. He has the most bouts in the UFC Bantamweight division history with 20 of them things. He has the most significant strikes landed in UFC Bantamweight division history with 1,211. He's an Eagle FC, Jungle Fight, and RFA alum. He was a former RFA champ. He's on a 1-fight winning streak. He has won 1-1 since 2022, and 8 of his 20 wins are via submission. Now, Pedro, again, I've always loved Pedro Munoz, man. He's an OG. He's been there. He's done that. He had a solid battle with Marlon Vera in August, so he's still very good. He's showcasing. He's not having like a cliff drop in performance. He still has the skill and ability. But how is he going to handle the speed and the length of the Matrix, man? I mean, Kyler is literally called the Matrix for a reason. If you don't know, you're going to know. That will be on full display for UFC 299. I'm taking the Matrix. We putting him on that parlay. We marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. Moving on. We have Mateusz Gamer Gamrot. 33 years old with a 23-2 record and the number 6 next to his name, taking on Rafael Dos Anjos, 39 years old with a 32-15 record and the number 11 next to his name. Now, RDA, the dude's almost 40 years old. He's still getting after it. He's fighting the 6th ranked lightweight in the UFC. He just is coming off a 5-round main event against Vicente Luque at welterweight. That was in August. Now he's getting a chance to fight up in the rankings against a very, very good Gamrot in his prime, back in light heavyweight where he dominated for so long. I think it's a lightweight. So Mateusz, he has a wrestling style. He's a southpaw fighter who trains at an ATT. He has a black belt in BJJ. He won gold in the 2014 and 19 ADCC European Championships. When I mention golds in grapplings and wrestling, I usually make sure it's the Worlds, or I usually at least make sure it's the Olympics in wrestling or championship stuff. I don't really mention bronze and silvers. But you wanted to have something here for him, and the European Championships is still a big deal. So 1 gold in the 14 and 19 ADCC. It's the best grappling events out there, European Championships. He had the fastest submission by Kimura in UFC history, which was 65 seconds against Jeremy Stevens. He is a KSW alum and former champ. He had 3 successful KSW defenses. He's also a Cage Warriors alum. He's on a 2-fight winning streak and is 3-1 since 2022. 8 of his 23 wins are via knockout. Now, RDA has a BJJ style. He's an orthodox fighter. A little southpaw via orthodox. He has a 4th, not a 1, not a 2, but a 4th degree black belt in BJJ. He has a black Prajid in Muay Thai. He won gold in the 2003 Jiu-Jitsu Worlds. He's the former lightweight champion with 1 successful title defense. He has the longest total fight time in UFC history at 8 minutes and 26 seconds, 8 hours, 26 minutes and 49 seconds, nearing 8.5 hours. He is the first and only fighter to reach 8 hours of fight time in UFC history. He has the most unanimous decision wins in UFC history with 11. He's tied with Francisco Trinaldo for most unanimous decision wins in UFC lightweight history with 7. He's tied with Diego Sanchez for most bouts in UFC history at 21. He's on a 1-fight losing streak. He is 2-2 since 2022. His last 2 fights were at welterweight in 2022. He did beat Renato Moicano and lost to Rafael Fiziev at lightweight. That Fiziev fight was a crazy war, man. And 11 of his 32 wins are via submission. RDA, ladies and gentlemen. I'm so blessed that I get to see him before he retires in person. Now, again, I really love RDA. If you're a fight fan, you got to love him. He has great grappling. He's got good striking. But when it comes to grappling, man, Mateusz Gamrot is really going to put the pedal to the metal. He is going to be relentless with takedown attempts, And I'm just not sure how much Mateusz is going to be willing to exchange with RDA. But he has defeated solid fighters of late. You know, Jalen Turner, although he grappled him most of the fight. And a very good young and talented and young Arman Sarukian. For that reason, it's just hard to overcome a dude in his prime. RDA, yes, you're a legend, but almost 40 years old at 39. I can't pick you. I'm taking Gamer, but I'm avoiding him on a parlay. I do think there is an opportunity for RDA to get after it. And looking at the odds, let's see. I wonder if they're close or if they're big on. They're probably pretty big for Mateusz. Yep, Gamrot's at minus 430. Dos Anjos at plus 300. Moving on. Still in the prelims, we have Caitlin, the blonde fighter Sermonara. Again, previously Caitlin Chukagian. She's 35 years old with an 18-5 record and the number 4 next to her name. Taking on Macy, the future Barber. No, she's not 35. It's got to be 25. Typo. She is 25. 25-year-old fighter with a 13-2 record and the number 6 next to her name. See, I got these fighters so locked in, I knew 35, like, that's a snare. She's no way. Anyways, another tremendous fight. When you want to talk about the new era of MMA, especially in women's MMA, Macy Barber's that, a la her nickname, the future. She is taking on a legend, like a gatekeeper in the best of ways. She's a perennial number 1 contender. She's fought for the best of the best, fought for many title shots. And let's look at the specifics here. Let's speak facts, huh? She has fought Amanda Ribas, Jennifer Maia, Vivian Araujo, Cynthia Cavillo, Jessica Andrade, Antonina Shevchenko, Valentina Shevchenko, Jennifer Maia again, Joanne Calderwood, Jessica Irene Aldana, Liz Carmouche, Lauren Murphy, Sierra Eubanks. I mean, legit the best that the UFC has to offer in women's MMA. Now, Macy, though, she is on a tear. She's looking for one more win and her first chance at a title. So breaking it down, Caitlin has a black belt in BJJ. She's a Cage Fury alum and former champion in 2 weight classes and a World Series of Fighting alum. She is tied with Valentina Shevchenko for the most wins in UFC women's flyweight division history with 9. She has the longest total fight time in UFC women's flyweight division history at 3 hours, just under 3 hours and a minute. She is tied with Jillian Robertson for most fights in UFC women's flyweight division history with 13. She has the most decision wins in UFC women's flyweight division history with 9. She is on a 1-fight losing streak, but was on a 4-fight winning streak before that. She's got some length. She's got a 3-inch reach advantage and a 4-inch leg reach advantage. Now, Macy has a karate style. She trains at a team Alpha Male. She's got a 2nd-degree black belt in karate. She has a purple belt in BJJ. She's an LFA and Contender Series alum. She's on a 5-fight winning streak, and 6 of her 13 wins are via knockout. We know this. We know Macy is going to be a problem in this division for a long time. But at 25 years old, she is still learning and growing as an MMA fighter. You see the improvement fight over fight. Meanwhile, Caitlin has fought the best of the best for a long time, and in 2022 defeated very good fighters in Jennifer Maia and Amanda Ribas. I think she is going to provide some striking and game plan strategies that are going to be a lot for Barber to handle. Now, Caitlin is going to keep Macy at range. I think she's going to pick her off, use those kicks, use the jab, and Macy's going to look to close range with her powerful combos, try to close distance, get up in a clinch, maybe up against the cage, look to get some takedowns to wear on the veteran, try to tire her out. I think Macy, any given night, can finish anybody. But I think Caitlin is still too good. She's going to outpoint Macy for a very close decision victory. And for that reason, I'm taking the blonde fighter, but I'm avoiding her on a parlay where possible. Moving on, the prelim headliner. We got Curtis Razor Blades, 33 years old with a 17-4 record and the number 5 next to his name, taking on Jailton Malhadinho Almeida, 32 years old with a 20-2 record and the number 7 next to his name. And I, for real, still can't believe this is a prelim fight, because this might be the most vicious fight of the evening. Two men in the heavyweight division who are just built different, dude. These are two guys that hit like tanks. It's going to be a fun stylistic matchup because Jailton has been starching his competition, but he really hasn't fought someone who is good in the grappling like he is. Insert Razor Blades. Curtis Blades isn't going to allow Jailton just to rely on takedowns to wear out his opponents and look for those submissions. So it's going to be really fun to see who really is the full package at heavyweight. Breaking it down, Curtis trains at an Elevation Fight Team. He has a blue belt in BJJ. He has a JUCO wrestling background out of Harper College. He won the national championship there as a sophomore. He has the most takedowns landed in UFC heavyweight history at 62 in heavyweight. Crazy. He has the most control time in UFC heavyweight history at 1 hour, 20 minutes, and 6 seconds. He has the most top position time in UFC history at 1 hour and 6 minutes. He has the most takedowns in a fight in UFC heavyweight history. He had 14 against Alexander Volkov. He's an RFA alum. He's on a 1-fight losing streak and is 2-1 since 2022. 12 of his 17 wins are via knockout, and all 4 of his losses are via knockout. So to knock out or to be knocked out. He even has a 2.5-inch leg reach advantage. Now, Jailton is an orthodox fighter. He has a black belt in BJJ. 3 of his last 4 fights were performance of the night. He's been showing up. He's been showing out. He has the fewest strikes absorbed per minute in UFC history at 0.45. He has the highest control time percentage in UFC history at 89%. The highest top position percentage in the UFC history at 85%. The most control time in a UFC heavyweight bout. He had 21 minutes and 10 seconds against Derek Lewis in a 5-round affair. So 21 minutes and change on a 25-minute fight. He had control time. He's a Jungle Fight and Contender Series alum. He's on a 15-fight winning streak. 7-0 in the UFC. 15 of his 20 wins via submission. 7 via knockout. So 19 of his 20 wins via finish, all but 1. And it was his last fight, was his first decision, which is ironic enough, against Derek Lewis. Now, it's funny, even after breaking down the fight, Curtis has been the best grappling heavyweight that controls fights that way. And obviously, Jailton's doing the same, maybe a little bit better on his rise to the top of the division. This is going to showcase who is the better all-around fighter, the better grappler at heavyweight. I expect this, 2 grapplers striking. I hope they stay striking. And I doubt that this fight lasts to a decision. But I do think Curtis Razor Blades is going to show Jailton a thing or two as the more experienced UFC fighter. For that reason, I'm taking Curtis Blades, who at this moment is a -120 favorite. It's almost a pick'em. I am putting him on that parlay. We marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. That right there is a pay-per-view in itself. But because this is UFC 299, we're just now kicking off the main card. We got Pewter, No Mercy Jan, 31 years old with a 16-5 record and the number 4 next to his name, taking on Song, the Kung Fu Kid Yadong, 26 years old with a 21-7-1 record and the number 7 next to his name. Now, the former bantamweight champion, who many thought was bulletproof as a champion, now is in desperate need of a win in the midst of his prime. At 31 years old, he's coming off 3 straight losses, but of course it was against the best of the best in the division. Now, Song is getting another massive opportunity. He's getting the top of the division. He's still only 26 years of age, but he's that much closer to becoming the first Chinese male UFC champion. Breaking this down, Pewter has a boxing style. He trains out of Tiger Muay Thai. He's got a blue belt in BJJ. He is the former bantamweight champion and interim champion. He's tied with Marlon Vera, Montel Jackson, and Cody Garbrandt for the most knockdowns in UFC bantamweight division history with 10. He is on a 3-fight losing streak and is 1-4 in the since 2021. 7 of his 16 wins are via knockout. Now, Song has a Sanda style. He trains out of Team Alpha Male. He is a 1 alum. He's on a 2-fight winning streak and is 3-1 since 2022. 9 of his 21 wins are via knockout. Now, Song definitely has fought some of the best in the division since 2019. He seems like a veteran. He's still improving a ton fight over fight. But again, the challenge is that he's fighting one of the better boxers in the division. He's desperate for a win, and Pewter is going to come out the best version of himself, the hungriest he's been, in the best shape, and is just going to be looking for chaos, and I love it. Again, Song, he's a great boxer, but he's fighting a premier boxer. This is going to be a fun back and forth affair, but I'm taking Pewter Jan. I am putting him on that parlay. We marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. Again, the storylines in this freaking card. JoJo's last run, kicking it off against the Iron Lady, Marina Moroz. We have CJ Vergara looking for a quality win. Asu Almadeyev, 30 years old, a stud. We have the Taekwondo freaking highlight reel, Robelis de Spain, making his UFC debut. We got crazy strikers in Michael Olegchuk and Michelle Pereira. We have an amazing light heavyweight showdown. Jan Kutalaba, Felipe Lins. That's going to be chaos. We got the young Matrix Phillips taking on Pedro Munoz, young versus old. We got young versus old in Matoush Gamrot and RDA. We have young versus old in Macy Barber and Caitlin Sermonara. We have the all-around heavyweight showdown. Jailton Almeida and Curtis Blades. Who's the better grappler and striker? Young versus old. We have 2 amazing boxers, young versus old, and Song Yadong and Pewter Jan. Who's the better striker? Who's the better full package at heavyweight? Moving on, we have Gilbert Dorino Burns, 37 years old, with a 22-6 record and the number 4 next to his name, taking on Jack Della Maddalena, 27 years old with a 16-2 record and the number 11 next to his name. Again, we have another OG that has done so much for the sport, so much in the division, taking on a young, hungry fighter who thinks he's ready to fight the best of the best in the very good welterweight division. Welterweight, a lot like bantamweight, 1 to 50 is just full of killers and a bunch of hard hitters, man. Well, Jack's going to learn real quick, especially in Miami in the 305. So breaking it down, Gilbert has a BJJ style. He trains out of Kill Cliff FC. He's got a 3rd-degree black belt in BJJ. He won the IBJJF Worlds in 2011 and won them in 2013 in the no-gi. He had the 2022 Fight of the Year against Khamzat Chimaev. That fight was freaking ridiculous. He's on a 1-fight losing streak and is 2-2 since 2022. 9 of his 22 wins are via submission, 6 via knockout, so 15 of his 22 fights via finish. Now, Jack has a boxing style. He has a brown belt in BJJ. 4 of his last 5 fights have been performance of the night or fight of the night. He's been showing up. He's been showing out. He was the 2022 Newcomer of the Year. He's a Cage Warriors and Contender Series alum. He's on a 16-fight winning streak, 7-0 in the UFC, and 11 of his 16 wins come via knockout. Now, when you look at all the stats, you look at the momentum, Jack has it all. At only 27 years old, not even in his prime, the problem is he has struggled against good grapplers, and he is going to get a massive step up in competition, especially in the grappling department. There are levels to MMA grappling, and Gilbert's about as good as it gets. His best competition thus far for Jack maybe had been Kevin Holland, and no disrespect to the Trailblazer, but there's just so many levels between Kevin Holland and Gilbert Durinho Burns. I do believe Gilbert's going to show light work at Jack, grapple early and often, looking for some fun striking exchanges, and I think it will be even more so special and more of a dedicated version of Gilbert because he just suffered a beatdown against Bilal Muhammad. He was hurt, now he's healthy. I'm keeping the hometown fighter. I'm taking Durinho. I'm putting him on that parlay. We marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. Statistically, or the Vegas odds, the people that know stuff, they're taking Burns at plus 124. Yes, please. They had Peter Yan at minus 120. I'll take Gilbert Burns as the dog all day. Moving on. We have, speaking of which, we have Kevin Trailblazer Holland, 31 years old with a 25-10 record and the number 13 next to his name, taking on Michael Venom Page, 36 years old with a 21-2 record. Now, what's wild is the rumors and the early leak of Michael Page signing to the UFC made the internet go wild, made MMA fans like myself think of the possibilities. But even Michael Page and team said that was leaked before a contract was signed. But here we are. Michael is on the latter half of his prime at 36 years old. He hasn't been super active since 2019, but he fought for the interim Bellator championship and lost. His best Bellator win was against Douglas Lima in 2021 in a very close split decision after losing to Douglas Lima in 2019. Although Michael Venom Page has a ton of wins and highlight reels for days, he really doesn't have a quality victory in my book. I think the Douglas Lima of 2021 was a lot different than 2019. He kind of fell off a pretty big cliff there. His best win outside of that might be Paul Daly, which went to a decision. So now we have Big Mouth, who's just now entering his prime at 31 years old, who has been more active than anybody in MMA and really has fought the best and has a ton of quality wins recently, including Michael Chiesa, Santiago Ponzinibbio, Tim Means, Ronaldo Souza, Anthony Hernandez, and more. I think all those dudes are a problem for Michael Page. Breaking it down, Kevin has a second-degree black belt in Kung Fu, a black belt in BJJ. He is two of his last 4 fights have been performance of the night or fight of the night. You know, he's a trailblazer and Big Mouth for a reason. He shows up, he shows out. I got to see him beat Michael Chiesa in Salt Lake City. He's tied with Roger Huerta and Neil Magny for most wins in a calendar year with 5. He also has the most wins for the middleweight division in the UFC with 5 in a year. He has the most bouts in a 12-month period in UFC history with 7. That's crazy. COVID days. He was the 2020 Male Breakthrough Fighter of the Year. That was COVID. He's a King of the Cage, LFA, Bellator, and Contender Series alum. He's on a 1-fight losing streak. He's 4-3 since 2022. 14 of his 25 wins are via knockout, 7 via submission, so 21 of his 25 wins via finish. Now, Michael has a kickboxing style. He's an orthodox fighter. He has a 5th Dan black belt in kickboxing. He won gold in the 2007 Waco World Championships for kickboxing. Also won gold in 2009 for the WKA World Kickboxing Championships. He had 2016 Knockout of the Year against Evangelista Santos. He's obviously a Bellator alum. He's on a 1-fight winning streak and is 1-1 since 2022. 13 of his 21 wins are via knockout. Again, Kevin Holland is in his prime. Michael, of course, is a very savvy, proven vet who wants to prove himself in the UFC, just like Michael Chandler did. But the best part of this fight is Kevin's down to strike. He's down to meet in the middle. He's down to clang and bang. So be prepared for one of the more beautiful striking exchanges there is in a fight to see. Both men, I do believe they respect each other. They're going to look to make a highlight from each other at the same time. So again, expect them to meet in the middle, throw down, crazy striking combinations, so strap in. I am taking Kevin Holland. I am putting him on that parlay. Welcome to the UFC, Michael Venom Page. We marking that ish down. We getting that bread. Moving on. These last 2 fights. Oh my gosh. When this fight got announced, I lost my mind. Then there was the drama. Oh, it was too soon. It's not on the card. I was going to cry. Then it's back on the card. But we're getting Dustin, the Diamond Poirier, 35 years old with a 29-8 record, and the number 3 next to his name, taking on Benoit, God of War, Saint-Denis, 28 years old with a 13-1 record, and the number 2 next to his name. Number 12, excuse me. Now, you want to talk about a fight of the night candidate? This has to be the front runner in my book, especially because it's a 5-round co-main event. The fun striking will come from the Holland-Page fight. We have great boxing in the Petr Yan Song Yadong clash. We have Clash of Styles in the Birds JDM fight. We have carnage in the prelim headliner for the full heavyweight package fight showdown. Curtis Blades and Jailton Almeida. But with what is on the line and what has been done the past year, this to me is the most don't blink, can't wait matchup. Now this is about as good of a non-title fight as you will see. Dustin is coming off his first knockout loss since September of 2016 when he lost to Michael Johnson. After that fight, he got a win against Jim Miller 5 months later, so pretty quick turnaround. You know, he was younger. He's now 35. You know, he's still in his MMA prime, the latter half of that. But he does have a ton of mileage on him. He's been in a ton of wars, a ton of scraps. He's only fought once a year since 2021. He's only 7 months removed from the head kick knockout in Salt Lake City. I was there. It was insane. It was brutal. It was sad. It was exciting. But we have seen how that really has affected people, especially recently. I think the best example is Alexander Volkanovski. Quick turnaround, looked timid, even said he was timid, was respecting the power too much, wasn't himself, wasn't the aggressor. So how is this going to be different for Dustin? Well, I think, the Diamond, he's going head-to-head with, like he said, in the UFC countdown that released on Saturday night, Sunday, he's going into war with a young lion, an ex-French Special Forces soldier who has climbed the UFC leaderboard, the toughest division in the UFC, and he's done it faster than anyone besides Alex Pereira, who had a storyline matchup with the opponent, the former champion, and Israel Adesanya. Now, BSD, he is coming off 5 consecutive finishes in 2 years' time. And that was after a loss in his UFC debut in 2021. The challenges here Much like the young fighters on this card, he's going from the likes of Matt Frivola to Dustin Poirier. There's levels to this game. That's a massive leap, and Dustin is one of the more durable and battle-tested men on the UFC roster. Breaking this down, Dustin is a southpaw fighter. He trains out of ATT. He has a black belt in BJJ. He's a WEC alum. He's the former interim UFC lightweight champion. He had the 2018 Fight of the Year against Justin Gaethje in their first matchup. He's on a one-fight losing streak and is 1-1 since 2022. 14 of his 29 wins are via knockout, 8 via submission, so 22 of his 29 wins have come via finish. Now, BSD has a kickboxing and judo style. He's a southpaw fighter with a black belt in judo. 3 of his last 4 fights have been fight of the night or performance of the night. He's been putting on shows. He's been showing up and showing out. He's the first French fighter to compete and win on a UFC card in France. The first French fighter to be ranked in the lightweight division. He's a Brave alum. He's on a 5-fight winning streak. He's 5-1 in the UFC. And 9 of his 13 wins are via submission. Now, to reiterate, I think the key here is that this is a 5-round fight. BSD hasn't been to the 3rd round since he lost to Eliza Zaleski dos Santos in his UFC debut. In some of Dustin's craziest fights against amazing strikers like Dan Hooker, Max Holloway, Dustin went 5 rounds, and he didn't even need it in the fights against Michael Chandler, the first Gaethje fight, and the McGregor fights. If Dustin can last the onslaught and the powerful kicks and head kicks, like the one that ended the last fight, for the first 2 rounds, I really like the potential of DP here. I'm most curious to where Dustin's mentality is. After a knockout like that, where's the confidence? Where's his mindset? What's his game plan for this fight? I do honestly think that Dustin's going to handle this well because he has been through almost every situation, any situation in the UFC. He's never suffered back-to-back losses in the UFC or as a pro. I think he will have some good boxing and striking opportunities because BSD, he closes distance with these long, powerful combinations. When you're going from a big right hand to a high kick, Dustin can land some in close in the phone booth type strikes and combos. In the back of my mind, I'm interested to see if BSD is strategizing a game plan where he actually takes Dustin down. He tries for a submission. You know, that's shown to work in some of the big losses for Dustin. He's been submitted. I am a little bit worried about the chin of Dustin. You know, BSD has some different type of power. He is built different, freaking special forces. He's a savage. But the last time I bet against Dustin's chin was the second McGregor fight. It wasn't an issue at all. So I'm taking the dog. The underdogs, the OGs are coming out to eat. I'm taking the diamond. The fact that Vegas is putting Dustin at plus 172, he's about to prove the haters wrong. I'm taking the dog. They're coming out to eat. I'm taking the diamond. I'm even putting them on that parlay. We marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. Woo-wee! I can't wait for this fight. This is going... The first round, I am not even going to be able to breathe. I can't wait, and it's going to be about midnight, 12:30 in the morning, already on Sunday. I'm going to have a couple bevies by then. The blood and the juices will be flowing. Just in time for the main event. We're repping. We're ready. We got Sean Sugar O'Malley, 29 years old with a 17-1 record, taking on Marlon Cheeto Vera, 31 years old with a 21-8-1 record, and the number 5 next to his name. For me, you know, I watch the Timbo Sugar show. I watch the Bro Malley show when he has that, although it's not as big. I watch the embeddeds, the countdowns, all the Sean YouTube stuff because he's really good with social media and YouTube. There is so much to think about in this fight. we can overanalyze this fight or take in the information that we already have. Now, Sean, he's coming off a very close, hard-fought battle and a decision against Petr Yan, and he put Aljamain Sterling to sleep in the second round in his last fight, his first shot at the title. And Aljo at the time was considered one of the best bantamweights, potentially the bantamweight GOAT, and a true dual threat issue. Oh yeah, and Sean beat him with an injury, an oblique injury. He wasn't even able to train grappling in his fight camp against the grappler like Aljo. Now Marlon, he's coming off a close decision against Pedro Munoz. Then he had a loss to Corey Sandhagen where he got dominated by an injured Corey Sandhagen, who injured himself early. The 3 fights before that, he was getting outstriked. He was on his way to lose decisions. Then he scored very late knockouts against Dominic Cruz in the 4th round and Frankie Edgar in the 3rd. The first fight between these men in August of 2020, Sean was in control, teeing off on Cheeto until Cheeto kicked the nerve in his leg that made his leg go numb. I do believe Sean was easily on his way to win that fight until it happened. The interesting part of this fight, though, is if Cheeto can get really late into this fight, he does a great job at wearing out his opponents. Basically, by being damaged, they try to, finish them. They tire themselves out trying to knock him out. He really does a good job of being durable, and he might be able to wear on Sean, slow him down, have him, be a little bit slower, and he might be able to get a chance at another late shot and a late victory. Breaking it down, Sean trains out of the MMA lab, also Red Hawk Academy with his coach, Tim Welch. He has a brown belt in BJJ. 5 of his last 6 fights have been fight of the night or performance of the night. People say, how's he such a big deal? That's why he shows up, he shows out, he provides highlights. He is tied with TJ Dillashaw for the most post-fight bonuses in UFC bantamweight history with 8. Interestingly enough, he's actually tied with Marlon Vera and Rob Font for the second most knockouts in UFC bantamweight history with 6. So maybe after this fight, one of these gentlemen will take the lead. He has the highest significant strike accuracy percentage in UFC bantamweight division history at 61%. He has the highest number of strikes landed per minute in UFC bantamweight history at 7.29. He has the highest significant strike differential in UFC bantamweight history at 3.89. He is an LFA and Contender Series alum. He's on a 5-fight winning streak, and 12 of his 17 wins are via knockout. Now, Marlon trains out of RVCA. He has a black belt in BJJ. He is an Ultimate Fighter Latin America alum. 4 of his last 6 fights have been fight of the night or performance of the night. He also shows up and shows out. He has the most finishes in UFC bantamweight history with 10. He's tied with Petr Yan, Montel Jackson, and Cody Garbrandt for the most knockdowns in UFC bantamweight history with 10. Maybe he or Petr Yan can pass each other up. He has the most total fight time in UFC bantamweight history at 3 hours and 59 minutes. He has the most submission attempts in UFC bantamweight history with 16. He's on a 1-fight winning streak and is 3-1 since 2022. 10 of his 23 wins are via submission, 8 via knockout, so 18 of his 23 wins via finish. Now, to spice things up for this main event, Aljo announced on YouTube, I don't know if it was his YouTube or someone else's podcast that he was on, that he has heard rumors of Cheeto not having a good fight camp due to something like an injury or an illness or whatever. But even the best version of Cheeto, the only way I see him winning is by playing his best version of Rocky and getting beat up for 3 to 4 rounds and exhausting Sean as he tries to get a finish and finds an opening for a late knockout opportunity. Sean is going to outstrike Cheeto. He is going to use his footwork, his kicks, and striking ability to keep Cheeto at range and keep Cheeto chasing Sean. Sean will outpoint him if Marlon doesn't fight in the kill shot. And Marlon has never been finished in his pro career. So there's that. It's going to be tough, but Sugar is the man to do it. In the 305, to avenge the wacky loss, the Sugar Show is going to be full of color on full display. So don't blink, but don't sweat. Because he is undefeated by the Sugar State Athletic Commission. And in Miami, he'll still be still the bantamweight champion of the world. What a card, what an evening, what a main event. UFC 299 this Saturday in Miami. I'll be posting on socials a little bit of my Miami experience and try to post as much at the fight as I can. But next weekend, again, I'll have the pod right before the card coming back from Miami. And then after Miami, I'm actually having a work trip to Boston and flying back late Thursday evening. So hopefully shoot the pod on Friday. But we'll have another Fight Night Apex event, which is very anticlimactic after potentially card of the year going down this weekend and knowing that UFC 300 is coming up soon as well. But this card isn't a very deep card, but definitely has some decent names on it, including the headliner between Tai Tuivasa and Marcin Tybura. This will be a 3 p.m. Pacific main card start, so tune into that. But I'm excited for 299. This is episode 38. I'm your host, Shane Gillette. See you next week.